October 27, 1949. Paris Orly Airport. A man boards a Lockheed Constellation. He shouldn't be here. He had a ticket for a boat, a safe passage across the Atlantic. But destiny had other plans. Edith Piaf had begged him to hurry. "Take the plane," she had pleaded on the phone. "I can't wait to see you." Those words would set a tragedy in motion that still echoes through the streets of Paris today. To understand the man she lost, we have to go back to the beginning. Marcel Cerdan was born into poverty in Algeria, finding his way through the grit and heat of the Casablanca docks. He fought for every meal. Edith's journey was mirrored in his. Born under a street lamp in Belleville, she sang for pennies until her voice became the heartbeat of a nation. They were both children of the streets, destined for glory. By the late 1940s, Cerdan was a national hero. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a gentleman boxer who became a symbol of hope for a post-war France, fighting with a heart as large as his fists. By the late 1940s, Cerdan was a national hero. He wasn't just a fighter. He was a gentleman boxer who became a symbol of hope for a post-war France, fighting with a heart as large as his fists. And Edith? She was the little sparrow. A voice that could bring a country to its knees and lift it back up again. She owned the soul of France, and soon she would own the heart of its champion. They first crossed paths in 1946 at a Parisian social event. It was a brief encounter, a spark that didn't truly ignite until they both found themselves thousands of miles away in New York City a year later. In the autumn of 1947, their worlds finally collided. Piaf was performing at the Versailles. Cerdan was preparing for a world title match. In the city that never sleeps, the King and Queen of France found each other. Cerdan was a married father of 3, living a quiet life in Casablanca. But the pull was magnetic. Their secret affair became the most famous open secret in the world, a romance that scandalized and enchanted. Piaf wanted to refine her champion. She gave him books by André Gide and taught him about classical music and art. She saw the sensitive, uneducated soul beneath the brute strength of the boxer. They were the ultimate power couple. She represented the French spirit. He represented French strength. They were followed by paparazzi everywhere, their every move documented in the headlines of 2 continents. In September 1948, the world stood still when Cerdan defeated Tony Zale to capture the middleweight title. It was the peak of his career. Edith was there in spirit, praying for every punch he threw. On the night of the fight, Piaf claimed she smelled the scent of roses in her room, a sign from Sainte Thérèse that her prayers were heard. Their love was becoming something more than human. It was spiritual. By September 1949, their love had reached its emotional peak. It was then that she wrote the lyrics to her most famous anthem, Hymne à l'amour. She didn't know it was a prophecy. The lyrics spoke of a love that transcends the physical world. If the blue sky should fall, it doesn't matter if you love me. A song that promised devotion even if the earth itself crumbled away. God reunites those who love each other, the song concluded. She was writing her own future, a future where God would indeed be the only one left to reunite them after the catastrophe. October 1949. Piaf is in New York, performing to sold-out crowds. Cerdan is in Paris, training for a rematch against Jake LaMotta. The distance was unbearable for a woman as insecure as Edith. She called him. "I can't wait another week for the boat," she pleaded. "If you don't come on the plane, I'll die." Cerdan, who would do anything for her, canceled his ticket for the safer sea voyage. He secured a seat on Air France Flight 009. He was one of 48 souls who boarded that Lockheed Constellation, unaware that they were flying into the mouth of a storm that had nothing to do with weather. It was meant to be a routine flight, a refueling stop in the Azores, then on to New York's Idlewild Airport. But the Constellation was carrying more than just passengers. It was carrying the hopes of a nation. The Lockheed Constellation was the pride of Air France, faster and more powerful than any plane before it. But even this technical marvel was no match for a series of fatal human errors. As the plane hummed through the night, the pilot was confident. But navigational errors, combined with thick cloud cover, had placed the plane miles off its intended course. They were flying blind. Marcel wasn't the only French legend on board. The celebrated violin virtuoso Ginette Neveu was also there, clutching her Stradivarius. Two icons of the French arts, heading toward the same mountain. At 2:51 a.m., the pilot reported the runway in sight at Santa Maria Airport. He began his descent to 3,000 feet, but he wasn't over the runway. He was over the peaks of San Miguel. It was a controlled flight into terrain, a simple miscalculation of distance that would end 48 lives in an instant. The plane was heading straight for the 900-meter peak of Pico Redondo. There were no survivors. The wreckage was scattered across the mountainside. In one moment, France had lost its champion, and the world had lost a legend. Marcel Cerdan was gone. The news reached New York as the sun rose on October 28th. Edith was at the airport, waiting for him. She never saw him walk through the gate. She would never see him again. She was devastated, shattered into 1,000 pieces. Doctors sedated her, trying to manage the overwhelming weight of her grief. She was a ghost of the woman she had been just hours before. Despite the sedation, she refused to cancel her performance at the Versailles. "Tonight I am singing for Marcel Cerdan," she told her manager, "and only for him, a vow of musical martyrdom." The air was thick with a heavy, expectant silence. The audience knew. They watched as the small woman in black took the stage, looking more fragile and broken than anyone had ever seen her. She sang Hymne à l'amour. The words she had written for him months ago now became his funeral dirge. Every note was a raw, bleeding wound, sung directly to his ghost in the shadows. At the song's final crescendo, she couldn't hold on anymore. She collapsed on stage. The crowd sat in stunned, weeping silence. The little sparrow had finally lost her wings. The guilt was a slow-acting poison. "I killed him," she would tell those who were there. To cope, she turned to morphine, beginning a downward spiral of addiction she would never truly escape. She turned to spiritualism. She held seances in her darkened apartment, trying to reach Marcel across the veil. She believed he was still with her, watching over her from the other side. In an act of incredible grace, she reached out to Marcel's widow, Marinette. The two women, united by a shared grief and a shared man, became close friends, a bridge across the tragedy. Edith's decline was swift and merciless. The morphine, initially taken for the pain of her accidents, became a way to numb the void Marcel left behind. She was becoming a ghost herself. A series of horrific car accidents in the early 1950s further broke her fragile body, making her dependency on powerful painkillers a permanent and tragic necessity for the rest of her life. Edith even took in Marcel's eldest son, Marcel Jr., helping him train as a boxer. It was her way of keeping the champion's spirit alive in her own home, a legacy passing to the next generation. Every time she entered the recording studio, the ghost of Marcel was there in the booth with her. Her recordings from the 1950s carry a weight of grief that is almost palpable in every note. Toward the end, she was a shadow of the woman Marcel had known. But whenever she sang Hymne à l'amour, she was, for a fleeting moment, young and in love again, back in that New York restaurant. She never sang that song the same way twice, because every time she did, she was singing to a ghost. Every performance was a raw, bleeding wound, a public display of an eternal sorrow. The investigation into the crash pointed to navigational error, a controlled flight into terrain that took 48 lives, a simple miscalculation of distance and altitude that led them straight into the mountain. Years later, she would headline the Olympia. But even at the height of her fame, the memory of Marcel never left her. Every stage she walked onto, she brought his ghost with her. Every song was a message to the other side. Among the debris at Pico Redondo, they found a letter from Marcel to Edith. He had written it just hours before boarding, filled with anticipation and joy for their reunion in New York. A letter she would cherish forever. In Casablanca, Marcel Cerdan is still a god. The gym where he trained remains a shrine to his strength and his gentlemanly spirit. He is the champion who never truly died in the hearts of his people. They are separated by distance in life and in death, buried miles apart. But their story remains the ultimate hymn to love in the heart of France, an eternal connection forged in a single fatal call. The families of the other victims, like those of Ginette Neveu, shared in this national mourning. 48 lives, each a world extinguished in the Azores mist. The Stradivarius was found in pieces, a symbol of a shattered era. The tragedy of Edith and Marcel is more than a romance. It's the story of how a nation's soul was shattered and then rebuilt through a single haunting melody. But why does it still resonate so deeply today? Piaf's voice became the conduit for a collective mourning. Her songs weren't just about her pain. They were about the universal experience of love and loss that everyone feels. Decades later, the echo of that plane crash remains. Their story was immortalized in the 1983 film Edith et Marcel. In a poignant casting choice, Marcel Cerdan Jr. played the role of his own father, bringing the legend full circle for a new generation. And most recently, at the 2024 Paris Olympics, Celine Dion's rendition of Hymne à l'amour from the Eiffel Tower reminded the entire world of the song's tragic origins and its message of eternal love. Can art carry what a person cannot? Edith Piaf gave her entire life to her music, and in return, it gave her a way to keep Marcel alive forever. Tell us what Piaf's voice does to you in the comments below. Subscribe to Paris Chanson for more untold stories from the heart of France. Thank you for watching. Watch our related documentaries on the screen now. Thank you for watching Paris Chanson, The Untold Stories. Paris Chanson, The Untold Stories.